It's been less than 24 hours since Utah's first prisoner execution in 14 years. Just after midnight, Taberon Honie was executed by lethal injection for the brutal murder of his ex-girlfriend's mother more than 25 years ago. The weeks leading up to today's execution were filled with questions over the state's plan to do it, a switch of drug in which they used, and last-minute appeals. It's part of what could be an extensive internal review. News specialist Brian Carlson is live at the Utah State Prison with what happens next. Brian?
Well, Danny, starting tomorrow morning, the Utah Department of Corrections wants to take a good long look at how it handled Honie's execution. You mentioned the switch in drugs, the court appeals in this case. Moving forward, the state wants its plan even more buttoned up for the state's next execution.
Here inside the Utah State Prison, just after midnight this morning, death row inmate Taberon Honie said his final goodbyes.
He raised up his head and looked over to where his family was viewing and just said, "I love you."
Honie executed by lethal injection before members of the media and others as witnesses.
And this was really like watching a person fall asleep and not wake up again. So it was a much more, I guess, if there's a peaceful way to put someone to death, that's what this was.
Based on a last-minute appeal, the state switched to a more proven and expensive lethal drug than their original plan. How that played out is now what the state plans to review in depth.
We will look from within on this. We'll have internal debriefings, and we will take a look at exactly what we did, how the planning went, and what we could potentially learn from moving forward.
It won't be long before planning for another execution could begin. Utah's next death row inmate who could potentially be executed is Ralph Menzies, convicted in a kidnapping and murder back in 1988. His expected execution won't be anything the same.
Would be significantly different because he selected the firing squad as a method of execution.
The state will begin looking at how it handled Honie to make sure Menzies' death doesn't see any issues.
Now, as for Menzies' execution, it will hinge on what comes out of a competency hearing scheduled for him in November. Menzies is eligible for execution by firing squad because his case is grandfathered under old Utah law before the state moved to lethal injection as the first means for execution. Live here from the state prison, Brian Carlson, KSL 5 News. Back to you.
Yeah, that's an interesting change in the law that makes this next one totally different, potentially. Thank you, Brian.